Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Matt Lateplo, and on behalf of OTC Markets, as well as our co-host, Zacks Small Cap Research, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from Bone Biologics Corp. Their session will be moderated by Brad Sorensen, CFA, Senior Equity Research Analyst with Zacks Small Cap Research. To note, you can submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Dina Walsh, Chief Financial Officer, and Jeff Frelich, CEO and President of Bone Biologics Corp., which trades on NASDAQ under the symbol BBLG. Welcome, Dina, Jeffrey, and Brad.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Yeah, looking forward to this conversation. Full disclosure to everybody that I have been covering as an analyst Bone Biologics for several years, and it's been a pleasure. And it's even more of a pleasure to be able to do it today because Bone has a great announcement that we will get to later. In fact, we already have a client listener question about that, but we will get to that down the road because it is exciting. But I want to give Jeff and or Dina a chance to kind of explain from the 60,000 foot view of Bone Biologics a little bit about the history and what the mission is of Bone.
Yeah, thanks, Brett, for having myself and Dina. So what we do, we participate in this orthobiologic market. It's a subset of the larger orthopedic market. We help patients grow bone better, faster, stronger. So kind of regenerative properties. We are laser focused on spine fusion initially. That's one of the harder healing environments in the body. The company came about through some technology discovered at UCLA. Scientists were looking at craniosynostosis, this premature closure of the infant skull. They noticed NEL1 being upregulated in those patients. They isolated it. Said, hey, let's look at maybe some orthopedic applications where we want to grow bone, regenerate bone. Hence the the company was formed. And so, we do license the technology from UCLA. We have worldwide rights to that, exclusive worldwide rights. So, that's kind of the 1,000-foot view of kind of what the company does, how the company came about, and we became public, trading on the NASDAQ in 2021.
Great, yeah, thank you. And so let's dive in a little bit to the technology and what is at the core, the NEL1, as it's called. What makes that so interesting? What have initial tests shown that the NEL1 technology can do, and what have you done with it, pairing it up with DBX in order to make it usable in spinal fusion?
Yeah, so the protein, this recombinant NEL1, is classified as osteopromotive. It increases bone formation in the presence of osteoblasts, which are bone cells. So if you think of this bone forming cascade, you have MSCs, mesenchymal stem cells. They're cells of unknown origin, right? They can become bone cells if they go down the osteogenic lineage. They can become muscle cells if they are on the myogenic lineage, right? So they're not sure, but those that go down the bone osteogenic lineage, you start seeing osteoblasts form, and you have this RUNX2 protein acting upon that. That recruits the NEL1 to the site. So think about it, kind of growing bone better, faster, stronger, only in the presence of bone. That's kind of the safety feature, which is really, again, kind of half the story here. That is this product going to be safe? Is it going to be effective? And so from a safety standpoint, because it occurs much later down this bone forming cascade, we don't see a lot of inflammation or ectopic bone growth. We see a nice, steady, controlled bone growth. And so in essence, this better bone for patients. And again, especially these hard healers. I refer to hard healers to talk about patients that are immunocompromised or diabetic or obese or smokers. They have trouble regenerating bone cells on their own, so they need help. And this is what surgeons look for to make sure they get a good solid bone formation, that there's no revisions, a redo where the patient has to come back and present himself for another surgery. And so that protein, right? So it's applied right to the surgical bed. And it's in a liquid form, and if you put it right into to that surgical bed, it would kind of run all over the place. So it's mixed with a DBX, a DBM, demineralized bone matrix, which is like a putty. So the surgeon in the OR tech, they would mix it, the protein and the putty combine, and right now we're calling it NB1, the combined product. That is packed into an interbody cage, and when the surgeon removes the disc for a patient that presents, let's say, with degenerative disc disease, that cage is packed in between the two vertebrae with the NB1 product, and that cascade starts. Right? You're starting to regenerate bone, between the two vertebrae. You start getting a thin line, and then a column, and then a solid bone formation.
Yeah, excellent. So you've obviously seen this in action somewhere, and I know you've done initial clinical tests. So what have you seen in there that gives so much promise and investors can look at and go, hey, this really has some potential now that we're starting human trials?
Yeah, so we've done animal studies in rodents and in sheep. We've seen the bone formation, number one, and then number two, we've seen a very good safety profile, meaning we're not seeing any inflammation, we're not seeing, as I mentioned, ectopic bone growth or cyst formation. We've also done our biosafety testing. It's sent out and put into lab animals and further tested. Clean from a cancer standpoint, or no impact on fertility. So all the biosafety testing has done in the animals, as well as the effectiveness we've seen in bone formation and getting fusions in those animals. So that led us up to moving this product into our pilot clinical studies.
And do you manufacture this product in-house?
Yeah, no. So we run the company, extremely lean. We partner. We have a lot of vendors, partners, and contractors. So we have a CDMO, a contract development manufacturing organization that makes the protein for us. We have another partner that does the fill finish. They kind of take it from a drug substance to a drug product. And then that is then will be delivered to the hospital, and then that's combined at the surgeries in the OR, where it's mixed with the DBM and the protein together. So yeah, that is partnered out, but we have the know-how and capabilities.
And would you as we go forward, which hopefully we will get approval for this at some point in time in the not too distant future, would that continue to be the case that you would outsource for cost purposes and quality the manufacturing, or would you look to bring it in-house?
Yeah, I think we would keep it outsourced. The CDMOs do a really good job. They're really efficient. They have great expertise and know-how. So I think from that standpoint, we would continue to outsource that.
Yeah, and they would have the capacity to hopefully get the hopefully increased volume once it gets approved.
Yeah, they do. Look, we have one of the top CDMOs in the world. They have various partners in pharma and biotech. A lot of those companies, they do have some capacity on their own, but they also can do a lot more efficiently with a CDMO partner. So I think it's beneficial to a lot of people given their expertise, their scale, how fast they can ramp. They've already in compliance with FDA and all the regulatory agencies. So that continues to make sense for us as we look down the road.
Yeah, definitely. And so, promising technology. What does the market look like? What does the market opportunity look like in the initial stages? Like you said, we'll talk about other opportunities in a few minutes, but what does the initial opportunity in spinal fusion look like for bone?
Yeah, so the orthobiologics market is about 3 billion. A little over half of that is in the U.S., growing in the upper single digits. That's broken, out into growth factors, which would be the main portion of demineralized bone matrix, allograft, synthetic stem cells. So all those subsegments comprise the orthobiologics market. As I mentioned, we're initially pursuing just spine fusion. Being a small company, we're laser focused on the applications in spine. As I mentioned, also that's one of the harder healing environments in the body. So we think we demonstrate success in spine fusion. We also have the indications for trauma, so long bone, arms, legs, things like that. And we think having success in spine could just naturally pull along the opportunity in trauma.
Yeah, it's a huge market out there. I think everybody probably knows somebody or experiences themselves with some sort of back problem, and this is a serious back issue, but those are certainly not rare in the United States, and I'm sure globally as well. So, we usually leave the client questions for the end, but this does relate to what we were just talking about. So, I want to jump in here and get one listener question in here that they're asking, are there differences in the human bones versus sheep bones that might impact the results? Like, would you expect to see different results? Do they react differently, or are they fairly equivalent? So you can kind of, that's why you test on them.
Yeah, no, they're fairly equivalent because the reason we did sheep before human, um, they're have some girth to them, so there's weight. These animals are quite heavy, so you're putting some pressure on the spine. So when you start out in research, and you're looking at you're doing it in rodents, and you're moving into larger animals, like sheep or even monkeys. Those get a lot closer and very much mimic human um, bone regeneration. So hence we did a pilot pivotal study in sheep, and so we had very mature sheep, not juvenile, which are throwing off a lot of growth factors. Very I would say heavy sheep to put pressure on that, and so this really closely mimicked, and we appropriately sized the implants that went along with this, and we it was really treated, and I would call it probably the first time that this animal study mimicked human studies. So for this product, um, and so that's how I would respond to that question, Brad.
Thanks. And yeah, that's the first time I've heard heavy sheep. That fat, big bone sheep is what we used for this study. Excellent. We won't tell them that, though. They might get offended. So let's talk about that actually. Let's get to kind of the headline from today that you've started human trials, and just walk us through like, I guess let's start back one step. How have you worked with the FDA through this process? Have you been working with them closely? Have they consulted with you on designing the human study we're going to talk about in a few minutes? So just talk about your interactions with the FDA first, and then we'll get to the study.
Yes, we've had several discussions with the FDA. We filed our pre-sub. The regulatory strategy for bone biologics is to do a pilot. So let me back up. This is deemed a combo product. So we have a drug and a device. Um, the dimerized bone matrix, the carrier, so to speak, that product has been on the market now for over 18 years. It's safe, it's proven. Because that is a device on the market combined with our protein, which is the drug, so a combo product, but the device is on lead, so it will follow a medical device PMA regulatory path. And so, based on that, we will do a pilot clinical study, which we've undertaken, 30 patients in Australia. As you alluded, we had our first 2 implants this week. Um, and these are patients with degenerative disc disease, so this will be a single level fusion. And then the at the conclusion of the pilot clinical, then we would move into a pivotal clinical, so a larger study here in the U.S., possibly 300, 350 patients. And then after the completion of the pivotal study, then we would submit that to the FDA in a form of a PMA.
All right, excellent. So let's talk about the human study. You said it's mainly taking place in Australia. There's 30. This initial study is going to be 30 patients. We've had 2 that just were announced today. What is the process of getting those patients? How difficult is that? What's the time process looking like to get from 2 to 30, get the additional 28? Kind of let investors know what the first pivotal trial is, the pilot trial, sorry,
Yeah,
is timeline is looking like.
yeah. So we will have somewhere between. So we're continuing to enroll sites. We'll have somewhere between 6 and 8 sites when all said and done. This will help us enroll the 30 patients. The Of the 30 patients, we'll have 2 treatment arms and 1 control arm. These will be single level degenerative disc disease patients. There will be a T-lift procedure. Um, the um, kind of the big question you get is how long, the timing, and so you're kind of at the beck and call of the patient when they present themselves to the surgeon. They go through obviously several treatment options. Maybe they're exploring physical therapy first, see if they get relief. Maybe they're moving on to maybe some injections, nerve blocks, such like until they realize that I'm not getting any relief, I'm still in quite discomfort. Then they look to maybe fusion as a solution, and so that's kind of identified. Once the patient, the surgeon says, okay, you're a fusion candidate, then they bring them back and they go through the inclusion exclusion criteria. And there's a kind of a list of items that they need. They can't have previous back surgery and other treatments and things like that would interfere with the study. So then once they kind of clear those um, criteria, then they move into the surgeon getting the patient to actually consent to being part of the clinical study. So it's kind of those 3 steps in the process, and those can take weeks to a good month or so to clear.
Yeah, that is quite the process. So let me ask, why are the tests being done in Australia versus the United States?
Yeah, so 2 reasons. One is moves pretty quick to get into Australia. A little bit more attractive on the pricing. For an early stage company like ourselves, we really try to control the burn and get the best use out of our money. And so Australia looked like we had done our animal studies in Australia as well. So it was kind of an easy transition to take that technology right into first in man in Australia.
All right. Well, and then since you brought that up, we will transition a little bit into what is often talked about at this stage of companies is the burn rate and the financing and dilution. Those are all things that people expect with clinical trial. But where does Bones stand at this point as far as funding needs to complete this initial human trial, and how much more funding we need to get to that point?
Yeah, so we have cash to get us into fall, just through get through the summer. We'll need about 5 million to complete the study and to get to data readout. Um, and then usually the next question usually is, well, okay, how much cash do you need to commercialize this to get all the way through across the goal line. and we'll probably need about 24 million to get to FDA approval and commercialize it.
And will the sources, like obviously you'll try to tap any source that you can at some point, but are there the potential for grants from different organizations? Will you hit up the equity market? Will you look to take on debt? What's the kind of philosophy of the company as far as obtaining those resources that are so important?
Yeah, as again, as an early stage company, our goal is, you don't want to run out of cash. You want to keep advancing the science. We're very cognizant of that, and that's why we run the company extremely lean. Really try to control the burn. We'll bring the cash in that's necessary to keep advancing the science. We think this is a tremendous novel technology that really addresses a lot of unmet needs in the spine space, and so to that end, depending on market conditions, right, we got to keep the company going. So we're always keeping our options open. We don't want to kind of paint ourselves into a corner, but cognizant of all the other challenges that go with financing. So um, options are always open, Brad, and but again, but we also are very cognizant of the spend, and really try to funnel most of this to the science.
Yeah, no, and I will just actually echo that really quick with my analyst hat on that the bone does do a very good job of controlling costs and staying focused on the science. And yet, one of my biggest frustrations is hearing about the cost of drugs. Yeah, there are some abuses out there, but people don't know what goes on behind the scenes. They just don't pay attention to the money that's needed to develop these drugs and these treatments that people rely on. And this is a huge need. So yeah, the financing, I think every investor in clinical trial companies knows that and appreciates the challenge of that and the necessity of that and the potential rewards for that. So that's my little soapbox, and I'll get off that right now. Um, since we're on the revenues, I just want to touch on, because you mentioned it earlier, that you have a licensing agreement with UCLA. Is that an ongoing? Do you have a fee? Do they get a cut of potential revenues? How does that work at this point?
Yeah, we pay an annual licensing fee, and then we will pay on a few milestones as well,
Okay.
and then there's royalty rates on revenues down the road. So
Yeah.
it's but we think we have a very attractive agreement. We have rights to three indications, as I mentioned: spine, trauma for hard bone, and then the third option we didn't mention yet was for osteoporosis. So
Yeah, I
that'll
wanted
be
to get into that. Lastly, was so what is I know you're just kind of starting on that. That's the periphery, but I did because everybody knows about osteoporosis. What do you see as the potential there, really quick?
yeah. So that's a large market, right? So well over $10 billion market. Um, this would be a systemic approach where spine and trauma, the now would be applied right at the surgical site.
Right.
Osteoporosis would be a drug application, systemic application. We'll look to license and partner that. That would be a huge undertaking for a little company. But again, demonstrating success in the humans markets in a challenging healing environment like the spine, we think bodes well for opportunities in osteoporosis, where folks are. Again, what's unique about now is it regenerates bone. It doesn't slow bone loss like a lot of the drugs on the market. So that's going to be an interesting opportunity, and one that we think will partner with pharma.
Yeah, I think that would be a huge opportunity, and that's just another good thing to know that this does have the potential to impact millions of lives in a positive way, and that's one of the positive things. There is one question that relates to the trials that I think is a good one here. So you get congratulated, which I also do, on starting those human trials because that is a big step. Will you be providing interim data before the study is completed?
Yeah, so it'll be some sort of interim update. I don't know if it's data or how much will be shared at that point. You have to be cautious with with the FDA and such. So there will be some sort of interim update.
All right, that's good for investors to know. Let's see. I want to make sure I covered everything we wanted to here. Yeah, I think so. I think we've provided a good story. So I want to give you guys an opportunity to address anything that I hope I covered most everything. But I want to give you an opportunity to address investors, leave them with something that they can grab onto, or touch on anything that I missed that you want to address.
Yeah, I think if I put my old analyst hat on, I think the three big takeaways is it's a very attractive market opportunity, as I mentioned. Over 3 billion. Um, the the surgeon has to do nothing different with our product when they do surgery, so it doesn't interrupt their flow of business or procedures. I think second, the nail product, nail solution, providing good controlled bone growth with a strong safety profile. Much later in the cascade, there's over 45 peer-reviewed publications out there, and then I think lastly is a very clear regulatory path with the agency, this PMA, and so doing a pilot clinical, then a pivotal clinical, and then submitting that to the agency. So I think it's a really simple and easy story to understand. But with an aging population and an active population, people want to really take care of their back issues, and we have a great solution for patients and surgeons as well as the payers.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and that's one thing. And I encourage investors. He mentioned there's 45 peer-reviewed studies out there, and if you go look at the study results, like there are charts, and if you go to the bone biologic thing, you can see those, and it is very encouraging. So I encourage investors who are interested to look at that. And I want to thank everybody for their time and consideration here. If you have more questions that you didn't get to ask, or you want some more information from the company, please, they're very willing to talk to investors. So there's a way after the conference to set up meetings with them, as was described. So please do that. But for now, I want to thank you, and I'll leave it to Jeff to finish it off. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, Dina, anything else you wanted to add or that we didn't touch
No,
on?
no, I think we've covered, the main points. We do run lean. We use the best, use of our money, and we've really got some good news out there for investors to look forward to.
Yeah, so the investors, reaching through Brad or our IR firm LHA or on our website, multiple ways to get in touch with the company. I appreciate everybody's time and attention today.